Hello and welcome to Open Dialogue. I'm Noel T. Manning II, and I'm really excited about today's guest. This guy has been in so many different films and TV shows and stage productions over the years, really grew up in the industry. It's a person who was a bad prom date for somebody named Carrie. Also loved to don this red costume and became a superhero, but didn't quite know what he was doing. Yeah, because the directions got lost. It's also somebody that found a way to hang out with Butch and Sundance along the way. Looking back at William Katt's career, or Bill Katt, or Will Katt, depending on who you're talking to and who he's talking to, it's amazing. Look in the 70s, and there were classic TV shows like Kojak and Ironside and Gunsmoke, Policewoman, Kung Fu, and MASH. He got to spend time working on those TV series, and he's still working today. He's really never stopped. So we're really happy to have William Katt here to talk a little bit about his career and his love of this industry that's been a part of his life since he was a kid. Welcome to Open Dialogue. Hello and welcome to Meet Me in the Movies, Open Dialogue. I'm Noel T. Manning II, hanging out with Bill Katt, and he told me I could call him whatever, and so we're going to do that. We're going to do that, man. Thanks for joining us right here.
Oh, hey, it's happy to be here. The audience wasn't privy to it, but you were telling me a story about your name. And now I will always know you. I'll connect you with Leon Russell, one of my favorite musicians.
Very cool. Very cool. I'll take that, man. I'll take that. Well, I'll tell you, you've got a new film out, and it's an indie film called Overrun, and we're going to talk about that. But you told me that we could talk about other things as well. So before we get to that, I'd love to kind of go back over your body of work, if you're good with that, and just talk about some of the things that you've been able to be involved in over the years. And when I go back and look at your work, man, it's 5 decades. Is that right? Is that right?
God. Well, I was thinking the other day, because I'm doing a movie here, a John Cusack film, and Emil Hirsch. I'm working in Arkansas right now, and I was telling these guys, I said, it's funny because I used to always be the youngest guy on a set, and now I'm always the oldest guy on a set. Crazy. But maybe that's a testament to the longevity that I've been lucky enough to be afforded,
Yeah. Well, do you remember the moment that you knew that this was something that, I want to do this? Do you remember when that was?
Honestly, I had worked a little bit on and off from the time I was like 12, doing a rawhide with my dad and Bill Williams and my mom, Barbara Hale, who was on the Perry Masons. I worked a little bit as a kid and those kind of things, and some TV and film and theater, but it really wasn't until I did the film Carrie with Sissy Spacek and John Travolta. Right. That's really when was the moment I thought, oh, gee, I think I can have a go at this, because I started to actually make money. I could pay my rent. And I said, you know what? I might be able to do this. So I'm going to give it a shot.
Well, and that film was such a success as well. And you had this legendary director that was attached to it as well. And, you think back to that time period and the Stephen King films that were coming out, being adapted from his works. And there were so many of them that were memorable. And that one still holds the test of time. What do you think about, what do you think the reason is that film has held up for so long?
Well, for me, it was just being in the right place at the right time. Luck has so much to do with a career in this profession, pretty much any profession, but more so with this profession. I was at the right place at the right time, and Brian De Palma, who had been around for a while, had made several films with Bobby De Niro and Tommy Smothers, and he was poised to really have a breakout moment in his young career, and we were all just lucky enough to be there in a film that was, I think, one of his seminal films in his career. But again, I think it was more so just luck. I fit the bill. I was the guy he was looking for. However, at the time, that was considered kind of a booby prize, because although it was great for me, everyone had a career off that movie. But I had auditioned for George Lucas to play that iconic role of Luke Skywalker, and gosh darn it, doggone it, I didn't get it. I think my hair was too long. I think I blew it.
At least, if this robot has any information relating to the destruction of Organa Major, I'm sure you'll be able to name your price.
Anything I want. That's interesting.
Well, look, maybe you should just drop us off. I'm sure we can find someone willing to take a risk.
You got a ship. Where do we go from here? They probably took her to find the hidden bases. I don't see how we can possibly find the rebels before she breaks. And the Empire has already beaten us here.
Yeah, well, she's part of the royal family. They won't get anything out of her. She knows the power of mind control. But she is the only link between us and the hidden bases.
Well, you think we should go after her?
I didn't say that, but it does appear to be a logical alternative.
Wait a minute, she's an Alderaan. No, it's impossible. Nobody goes anywhere near the Alderaan system. Hey, I'm a freebooter, kid. I'm not a revolutionary. You board the wrong ship.
Oh, wait a second. Maybe the fact that no one would go there voluntarily could help us. I mean, they probably don't expect anyone to ever dare try to, right?
Well, don't you believe it?
Look, fear is our greatest offense. I doubt that the actual security there is any greater than on a Quali or Sullust. And what there is probably directed toward a large-scale assault.
This isn't a game, you know.
How many more systems have to get blown away before you have no more places to hide and they're forced to fight? Don't you realize what's going on out there?
You were too pretty at that time. That's what it was.
Yes, I was pretty. I was real pretty. Yeah. What happened, Noel? Oh my God, what happened? Here, maybe that works better. See? Take all those lines out of my face.
I love it, man. I love it. Well, and that, if you're going to get a booby prize, that's not a bad one. Not
a bad one. Hey, knock wood. It was a blessing, and I've had a very good career as a result of that film. So my hat's off to Brian for casting me.
Yeah, and I look at you look back at the 70s, and you were involved in so many classic television shows. In the 70s, and you look at MASH and Kung Fu and Emergency, which is one I remember as a kid watching with my grandmother, who loved these type of things. And Kung Fu was something I watched with my dad. And so Kojak, I mean, there's just so many of them. So many of them.
Gary Busey and I talk about that, because that's where we worked together several times now, Busey and I, not only in Big Wednesday, but we worked on John Milius's opus of Teddy Roosevelt's Rough Riders. We worked on that together with Berenger and Sam Elliott and some of the guys. We were in Texas for 4 months. But Busey and I go back to Kung Fu. That's actually how we met. And we've stayed friends. Gee, many Christmas. It has been like 45 years, maybe longer than that.
Wow.
I knew Gary before Jake was born, his son.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, the relationships that you're able to build with just these chance meetings, like you said, they can last for your lifetime. They can last forever.
Yeah. Yeah. It's funny. We were talking about it with some friends, how these detours that you make in life very often turn into highways. You think it's just a detour. You're going on a detour, and all of a sudden you go, oh, no, new direction.
Yeah. Yeah, man. Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned Big Wednesday, because I grew up in Eastern North Carolina, and surfing was something that I love to do. I never got to surf the big waves of Hawaii or Australia or even California, but North Carolina had some pretty good ones. And so any films that came up relating to surfing, I had to watch. And I remember reading the book Big Wednesday before the movie came out, knowing the movie was going to come out. And so that and Endless Summer are in my archives of films that I go back to occasionally. So I'm glad you brought that one up. When I was in high school, there was a TV series that lasted for several years, Greatest American Hero. And that's one that is still so iconic and thought about today, and people go back to it. But
people don't recognize me. I do that, and they go, "Oh, you're that guy in the funny red suit."
Yeah, and I tried to buy a red suit just like that back in 1983 for my high school graduation. I was going to wear it across the stage, could not find it. I tried. I could probably find one pretty easily now, but yeah. that TV show was pretty long running at that time for a show like that. And man, you had a great cast as well. Talk a little bit about what that meant for you and maybe some of the opportunities that came out after that, because it was fascinating, the longevity of a show like that at that time. I mean, now we see superheroes all the time, but now that was not the case. It was not the case back then.
No, everybody now from all these superstars now, Scarlett Johansson, Ed Norton, and the list goes on, Robert Downey Jr. They all want that giant franchise in these films because it's a great platform for them to then go off and do their other work. But at the time, so it's coveted now, but at the time, the greatest American hero was to don a suit for a young actor who was up and coming. For me, to don a suit was risky. You're talking about risk earlier in the interview.
Yeah. Courageous. I'll say courageous.
Yeah, it was interesting because I had a very good career as an actor, and at the time I was working with some wonderful people in New York on stage. So it was a risk, but Stephen Cannell had flown out to New York. I was doing a play with Diana Wiest, the wonderful Diana Wiest, wonderful actress. And we were doing an off-Broadway play called Bonjour la Bonjour, a Michel Tremblay play. And Stephen came. I had read the script. It was incredibly funny, laugh out loud. I was not prone to do it, but he flew to New York. And I tell you, the guy charmed my socks off. Wow. He was so gracious, so charming, so disarming, funny. And he promised me it was going to be a lot of fun. And it certainly was. It was a lot of fun. The one thing he didn't want to talk about, I'd say, well, what about this suit? And he'd say, no. We'll get to that. Don't worry about that. Because, so the reaction you see in the first pilot, when Ralph dons the suit and looks in the mirror for the first time, and I go, hi, sailor, completely un-PC now, right? But he kept it in, and that was ad-libbed. And one of the wonderful things that Steve Cannell knew was to give us free reign. The wonderful Bob Culp and Connie Selica, the lovely, beautiful thing that she is, and Gal, we're still dear friends. He gave us all free reign, and a lot of the guest star actors, we had that, and it was just wonderful. Also, it was one of the first shows that was using current pop songs in the soundtrack, which was a milestone at the time. Kudos to Mike Post and Steve Cannell for making that happen. So
when you first took on that role, did you have any idea the impact it was going to make and the success that it was going to be?
No, none whatsoever. I had no idea. No. I thought, and my agent at the time, I was at ICM with Michael Black, and he said, Bill, the money is great, and he said it's very funny. Stephen Cannell is very well respected. Quite honestly, I didn't know who Steve Cannell was, but he was a well-known entity in the film and television industry at the time. But I didn't know that. I was concentrating on the theater and films at the time. But he said, do it. It's probably going to go 3 or 4 shows, and then you can go back to New York and do theater. And lo and behold, it came out. It just went through the roof. So I was happy and sad at the same time.
Well, there's never, you as you say, you take these risks and you don't know where they're going to fold. You think it's maybe a detour, but this became a highway for you that, here we are decades later still talking about that and the impact it had. And you go back to what you were saying as well about Mike Post and music being used in TV and being successful. I worked at Camelot Music, which was a music chain in 1985. And one of the biggest sellers we had as far as catalogs was TV show themes. And it had a lot of the Mike Post themes, including this theme as well from The Greatest American Hero. And it's one that people can still sing today.
Well, I think, yeah, it is. And I'll tell you, Noel, it wasn't just the theme, which I don't know. I think the theme song might have been bigger than the TV show itself. It certainly helped it along.
Look at what's happened to me. I can't believe it myself. Suddenly I'm up on top of the world. It should have been somebody else.
Mike Post they were using Elton John. They were using some other very current artists. David Bowie was used in some of the stuff. I mean,
yeah,
that's one of the big disappointments with the DVDs that came out later on, is that they didn't have the licensing to put on those DVDs, so they had to replace all of that extraordinary music that they had, and that was a little disappointing. Although I still like the DVDs. I think that they were quite good, but we did miss that other component.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, as we continue to look at your body of work, you just continued over the years to churn out so much, and everything from TV to film, independence. And what are some of the things now that draws you to roles compared to what it was like in those early years for you?
There's really a few things that draw you to a film. One is if the script is very good, if the director is someone you'd like to work with.
Okay.
And the other is, do you need the money?
Okay. Yeah.
And there was a period of time in my career where, I was going through a horrendous divorce, paying for my attorneys, her attorneys, paying for 2 or 3 houses at the same time. So you go, I just want to frickin' work.
Yeah.
It really doesn't much matter. I have mortgages to pay, attorneys to pay. And that's another factor that enters into it in a long career with an actor. If they're as unfortunate to have that kind of dissolution of a marriage, it's such a dreadful thing. I don't recommend it to anybody. But those things all played a factor in my career trajectory. I did some very bad projects that I wish I could take back. Which we will not go into. All right.
That was my next question. What were some of those projects? I will not ask it. Well, and
there was some real clunkers out there.
Well, you've done some voice work as well for video games and some other stuff as well. And well, and that's you've done this for so long. You get a chance to explore so many different aspects of acting and deciding the route you want to go. As you think back over your career, what do you think is that one role besides Carrie that you will always go back to and just be thankful that you had that opportunity?
Oh, well, that's a no-brainer. It would be Pippin on Broadway. I worked with Ben Vereen, Cheetah Rivera, Bob Fosse directed it, although he didn't take credit, but Bob was there every frickin' day. He was there. Wow. We rehearsed that at Broadway Arts on 57th and Broadway, and Bob came the first day. Kathy, his assistant, was going to be the choreographer, and Bob came the first day, and he was, because of who he was so invested, and his ego was so tied up in it that he stayed because he liked what he saw.
Yeah.
And he was working with Ben Vereen, Cheetah Rivera. These are actors that he had worked with in the past. They had both gotten Tony Awards for the project. So that certainly stands at the zenith of my career, working with him.
Yeah, I mean, working in theater, film, TV, they're different avenues, but they're all using that craft of what you have, and you have to adapt it to that environment. Yeah. What are some of the greatest lessons you learned from your parents? Because as you mentioned at the beginning, this is an industry you were familiar with.
From my mom, it was always that you can do anything you want.
Yeah.
You put your mind to it. And from my dad, the caveat I took away from me in my life is I always keep my promises. Always keep my promises. No matter what I do, when I say I'm going to do something, go to the bank because it's going to happen.
Yeah. Yeah.
So those are the two things I got. Career-wise, my dad wanted me to do something else, but and he was successful as an actor, but more so as just a human being and a man. He was a good father to me, taught me a lot of valuable lessons that I took with me throughout my life. So,
yeah. Were there any of those acting talents that you look back on that you felt were mentors to you?
Some of the directors, I worked with John Frankenheimer. He was amazing. Richard Lester, just being on set and listening to the wonderful stories that he had to tell about the Beatles with the films that he directed.
Yeah.
That was Butch and Sundance that I worked on with Tom Berenger.
Wow.
Gee whiz, working with Jack Hofstas in the theater. I worked with Jack Hofstas, who won a Tony for Elephant Man on Broadway.
Yeah.
As a director. And I learned a lot about acting from him, about how to listen.
Yes.
And how to be spontaneous with other actors on stage. That's what I would have to say about that.
Yeah.
I learned, I'm a student of life. I learn from everything that I do. Noel, I'm going to take away and quote you when I leave this interview. I'm going back to the set. I'm going to talk about you. Okay.
Hey, man, I appreciate your time. William Katt, our guest right here on Open Dialogue, Meet Me at the Movies. Really appreciate it. I know I've taken more of your time than you had, and I do appreciate your graciousness.
I'm calling you Leon from now on.
Go for it, man. Go for it.
Take care.
Thanks.
My best to everybody. Okay.
Thank you. Until next time, I'm Noel T. Manning II for William Katt right here on Meet Me at the Movies and Open Dialogue. That's a wrap.